Hi there. I'm Leolia Lewis, and welcome to another edition of New Day, New Beginnings. Well, I've got a pretty good story for you today. It's all about guts, determination, strength, courage, and honesty. And yeah, it's a western. But my title is Can I Get a Witness? Are you available? Now, as we go through our story today, I want you to think about yourself. Um, Maybe not in the same scenario as our story, but could you be this kind of witness, or would you want to just kind of, fade into the background somewhere? This type of witness takes a very strong person, both physically and mentally. And when we say physically, I don't really mean like in a fight, but it's like it's a different type of fight. It's being worn down by words and threats and, yeah, even money. So, um, remember that old saying, what they say? Money is the root of all evil. Well, not really. Not really, because it's not the money, but it is what you do with it. And hiding the truth for money or convenience, it never pays off. And we see that so much in our very everyday living. On the news all the time, somebody's always doing something they got no business, trying to hide it, cover it up. We're seeing that on TV every single day. Those that have take advantage, try to take advantage of those who don't, bribing them with money or gifts or whatever. But in the end, the truth always comes out anyway. So you're kind of wasting your time thinking, oh, fast money, I'll do it. All I got to do is keep my mouth shut. Well, whether you keep your mouth shut or not, as we see now, the truth still comes out. So much for that. But we know, we know for a fact, hiding the truth, it never pays off. May not happen right away, but in the end, doesn't it always happen? Yes, it does. So this all started while Lucas was mending one of his fences. He was up in his on the borderline where he was mending his fence, and he happened to look up on the hill, and he saw a man get shot off his horse. But then he also saw the man trying to run away, and as he was running away, he was shot in the back. So Lucas saw the shooter, but the shooter also saw him. So he started shooting at Lucas, but Lucas took cover behind one of those big trees and he just stayed there. And finally, the shooter just rode off. So Lucas went down to see about the man, but he was already dead. So he loaded the man up on his horse and he took him into town to the marshal's office. So when the marshal came out and looked, he recognized him, and he said, "This is that Joey Faison. He works for that Hazlitt family up on the ridge." And Lucas just came out and said, "Well, his son Corey just gunned him down." And Micah said, "Did you see it?" And he said, He was up on the ridge near my South 40. And Corey just blasted him right out of his saddle. And then he took off for the hills, running home to his quote, safe haven, maybe. So Micah said, "Yeah, them Hazlets, those Hazlets, they've been trouble ever since They came into those hills. The only problem is nobody's ever been able to prove anything on them or get any solid evidence against them. So they've been in trouble ever since they came. So Lucas said, well, this can be proven because I saw it. So the next morning, Micah went out to Lucas' house to tell him that this Corey person, that was the shooter, that he had been picked up in another city already. So that sheriff from that city was coming to North Fork to bring Corey back for Lucas to identify as the shooter. So he said, probably sometime tomorrow. And Lucas was like, okay, well, that's fine. So later that day, Lucas went into town and he identified him. He said, yeah, he's the one. He's the one that shot him. Now, all this time, Corey's in jail, of course. He's back there hollering, he's lying, he's a dirty, rotten liar, and he's this and he's that. And he said, I wasn't within 50 miles of his place. And so he's just making up stuff as he go. So Micah says, well, Lucas, would you swear to this in court? And he said, sure, I'll swear to it. And all Corey kept saying was how he was lying and making it up, and he wasn't nowhere near it. And even as Lucas was leaving the jail, he's still hollering. He's talking about, I'll get you, McCain, me and my old man, and you just remember that. And he's going on and on. One of those brat kids that think he can get away with anything. Why? Because his father got money. And they, you know how that goes. That still happens today as well. So Micah tells Lucas, he said, well, the circuit judge will be here next Tuesday. So that means the trial will be next Wednesday morning. So Lucas was fine with that. Okay, I'll be there. So the next day, Lucas was finishing his breakfast in the restaurant. And this stranger walked up to his table. And he said, we've never met, Mr. McCain, so allow me to introduce myself. My name is C. Henry Whitmore. Lucas just looked up at him and said, well, like you said, Mr. Whitmore, we've never met. And he said, oh, that's right, because this is my first visit to North Fork. And Lucas said, well, then how you know so much about me? And he said, well, it's my business to know a great many things, sir, especially when I'm on a case, so to speak. And Lucas is like, what kind of case are you talking about? Now he's getting all business. Mr. Whitmore is saying, well, I've been summoned from Santa Fe to represent a man whose a great injustice has been done to him. And it appears that you're the architect of that injustice. And Lucas gets it. He said, oh, you're talking about Corey Haslett? And Whitmore, he's like, in a manner of speaking, he says, well, how about, let's say you made a mistake when you identified him. Now Lucas is getting mad. He said, well, let's not. So Whitmore, he's like, well, that guy, Joey Frazen, he was worthless. People detested him. He was a bushwhacker. Who's going to miss him? Nobody's going to miss him. And that's a fact, sir. And Lucas said, well, I saw Corey Haslett kill him. And that's a fact, too. So note at this point, now Whitmore is getting a little antsy. So he goes into his jacket pocket and he pulls out this envelope and he extends his arm out to Lucas across the table. And he says, now, there's $1,000 in this envelope, and I've been commissioned to give it to you. And Lucas, he's sitting there, he opens the envelope and takes the money out and he's looking at it. And Whitmore, here he goes, $1,000. Just think, it could be a nest egg to send that fine young son of yours to college when the time comes. Now, I ask you, Mr. McCain, isn't that logical? Doesn't that seem reasonable? Now, this is a trap that so many of us fall into. When people start talking about money, money we don't have, bucks maybe we may never have, what's the first thing? They start thinking about it because, of course, $1,000 nowadays is no money, but back then it was. But even today, they offer twice as much, but for the same reasons, maybe. But there's nothing, it's all about the dollar here. There's nothing else here that this man can offer him other than money. So he says, doesn't that seem reasonable? Now, Lucas says, well, I'll tell you what, Mr. Whitmore. He's like, yes, yes. How about you just tell Frank Hazlitt? The answer is no. And he just slams the money down on the table back to the man. And Mr. Whitmore, he just picks up the money and he's getting ready to leave. And as he leaves the table, he's turning around and he's saying, well, I'm taking the stage tomorrow, but meanwhile, I'll be at the hotel just in case you change your mind and want to get in touch with me. And then Lucas looked up at him and said, well, I'd advise you to take the stage today, or I could have you hauled in for trying to bribe a witness. Now while the getting's good. That sounds awfully familiar to me. Seemed like I heard that or used that back in the day with the kids when they doing stuff they know they got no business and trying to act like they not doing nothing. You better get out of my face. Ain't that what we used to say? Oh, God. But anyway, so the next day, while Lucas and Mark were working outdoors, two men rode up to their ranch. And one of them said, how you Mr. McCain, you're Lucas McCain, right? And the guy, Lucas said, yeah, that's right. And the guy says, well, I want to talk to you. And he says, well, talk about what? And the guy says, my little brother, Corey Hazlitt. So now this is Corey's older brother and his cousin coming to talk to Lucas, since I guess the man went back and told him he's not going for the money thing. So at this point, Lucas told Mark, well, take the bucket and go down to the stream and get some more water and send him on the way. So the man says, now, you say the wrong thing at that trial tomorrow, my little brothers will hang. And Lucas is mad and he says, well, I'll say the right thing and he'll hang. And now his brother looks at his cousin and he says, wow, that's brave talk, isn't it? But I know every man's got his price. Now, sometimes it's money, and sometimes it's a friend, or maybe even a relative, a very close relative. And he looks down at the stream where Mark is. Now, don't make no trouble for yourself, McCain, or nothing for that fine looking boy of yours. You know what I mean? And they just turned and rode away. So now he's been offered money and he's been threatened. And who could hurt you more than threaten your child? So they ride away. And when Mark comes back, he noticed it's something strange going on, and he said, "What's the trouble? Is there any trouble?" And Luke is like, "No, no, but you know what? Just stay close. Don't go anywhere unless I know exactly where you're going. Is that clear?" And Mark notices the tone of his voice and what he's saying, and he asked him again. He said, "Well, what's the matter?" But Lucas still said nothing. Nothing's the matter. I just want you to do as I say. Okay? So the next morning, Lucas came out looking for Mark because he didn't see him in his room. So he was looking for Mark and he was calling for him, and he went to the barn and can't find him anywhere. So he went riding out on the out in the field to see where in the world he could be. And he did see him working at the fence, the same fence that he had been mending. But when he got up to Mark, he was annoyed because it's like, didn't I just tell you don't go nowhere without telling me? So he was annoyed and he began to really scold Mark. Didn't I tell you? Why are you disobeying what I told you? So Mark was upset because he thought he would surprise his father and finish fixing the fence and he would be pleased. So he really kind of forgot his father said that because he was so focused on making his father happy. So he said, he apologized and he said, "I thought you'd be pleased and surprised to see that I finished the fence." And then Lucas realized he was a bit abrasive. So, he brought it down a little bit and he said, well, he apologized to him. He said, um, "I should have just told you from the beginning." So actually, he really sat and told him exactly what the story was and why he wanted him to let him know where he was and why he wanted him to stay close to him. So he told him the truth about both of them and why they came and how they threatened him, so forth and so on. So now Mark had a clearer understanding. So the next morning, when Lucas went to the stable to get his horse, surprise, surprise, there they were. And he was put in a chokehold by the cousin because the he was a big guy, and he put him in a chokehold, and then Corey, brother and father were there with the cousin. So the father walks up to him and he says, now, the way I got this figured, this trial is supposed to be taking place this week. But the only difference is you're going to change your story because my boy is on the spot. And Lucas said, "Well, I didn't put him on the spot." And the father, like, I know, but you're going to get him off. You're the only one that can save his life. And then Lucas says, well, killing me, it's not going to do you any good, is it? And the father says, "Oh, no, I'm just trying to talk some sense into you. I mean, what makes you so stubborn?" Now the cousin let him go and threw him on the ground. And the father told the cousin, "No, don't touch him again until I tell you to." So he's apologizing, and McCain gets up and he says, "Oh, I'm sorry he done that, Mr. McCain. You know what it means to be a father. You got a boy you love." And Lucas said, "Sure, I love him enough to bring him up the right way." Now the father's getting mad. Now, I'm not asking for no lectures. I'm asking for my boy's life. Don't you understand that? And Lucas said, "I understand it, but I can't do anything about it." The father says, "Well, you know what? They're not going to hang my Corey because you are going to see to it that they don't." Now, since I can't talk no sense into you, I guess I'll have to beat some sense. And when he said that word beat, he backhanded him, knocked him down, beat some sense into you. So when he knocked him down, he fell back, and the cousin caught him and start beating on him. So the cousin, yeah, he just beat him down, period. He just began beating him and beating him. He beat him to a pulp, I'll say. Um, and he beat him so bad, he beat him unconscious. So they just rode away. They just went on about their business. So let's fast forward, because now it's the next day and it's time for the trial. And later that day, I don't remember now, but it had to be later that day because he was getting his horse ready. So he came to town on his horse. He was totally disheveled, badly beaten, bloody face, totally worn out. He could barely get off his horse. So he walked, drug himself really into the marshal's office. And Micah looked up and he's like, "Where have you been? And what happened to you?" But Lucas didn't even answer. He was weary, worn, and angry. So he walked right past Lucas over to the jail cell where Corey was. And he said, "Let him out, Micah. Let him out." And Micah said, "Let him out? Why?" "Just let him out." So Corey, he could see that his father and cousins and brothers had gotten to Lucas, and he thought, he came out with this smoke on his face like, "See, I told you." But when he went to, I dropped my Bible. But when he went to go past Lucas, Lucas grabbed him up under his collar and said, "Now, your father didn't wait around to get my final say so. So I'm telling you, nothing he could say or do is going to change my mind." And that goes for bribes, threats against my son, and beating up on me. Because when I get on that witness stand, I'm telling them the truth, the whole truth, so help me God. And I'm telling you now so you'll know just what to expect. And he threw him back into the cell. So Micah said, "Oh, I'll go tell the judge you're ready." So now the trial went on as planned. He testified. And so this is like later on that day. They're having lunch. And even though the trial was over and everybody was saying, that they're glad it's over, and Michael was sitting there talking to Lucas, and he said to him, he says, "It's not over, Lucas. Frank Hazlitt has nothing to lose by killing you now. And that's just what he and his boys will try to do." And Lucas knew it. He said, "I know, I know." He said, "But anyway, I'm going home, and I'll talk to you later." And Micah, he says, "No, no, I'm going with you." No, Lucas says, "No, you're staying here." Now Micah gets up and he says, "Look, now wait just a minute. Now there's a time for everything. There's a time when it pays to be stubborn, but this is not one of those times. And besides, I like your company. I'm going with you." And he did. He went home with Lucas that night. And sure enough, that night after dark, three shadowy figures are at the McCain Ranch. And so they have them thin curtains. So through the curtains, the guys could see a figure sitting at the table. So they positioned themselves where they could get a clear shot. The father went, I want to do this. I want to do this. So he shot once, but the person didn't fall, didn't do nothing. He shot again. Did you guess why? Now, if you thought, oh, they must have put a dummy there, you're right. They did. They placed a dummy in the chair. They knew they were going to come after him. So now, when the guys see this, he didn't fall forward, he didn't fall over, he didn't do anything. When they approached the house, they realized they'd been tricked when they heard their voices behind them telling them to drop the guns. But of course, they didn't want to drop the guns because they fight to the end. So they all three of them turned around and began firing. But it ended up the brother got killed, the cousin got killed. That they told the father, "You might as well come on out," and he did. He just threw his gun out and came out with his hands up. But you know what? He looked up at Lucas and said, "I sure don't understand you, McCain." And Lucas looked at him and he said, "No, you don't. And I don't think you ever will." Question to you. Do you understand? I do. I understand that if you choose to do what's right, regardless of what you think or feel, you can always be at peace with yourself. Because if you're not at peace with yourself, you can't be at peace with anybody else. And peace is something that we can only get through our prayer and our reading of God's word. Speaking of that, let me pick up my Bible. Oh. Okay. Got it. Got it. Okay, where did I dropped it and I lost my page. 974. My page was, it's going to be the book of Jeremiah because I only selected three particular verses that I wanted to share with you because it's all relevant to what we said in the beginning when we said we need strength and uh, courage and all that stuff. So, but honesty was still my final word. But let's go to Jeremiah chapter 29, and let's just look at verse 13, 11 through 13, because it says here in Jeremiah 29, verse 11 says, "For I know the thoughts that I think towards you, saith the Lord. You have thoughts of peace and not evil, to give you an expected end, a good end. Then shall ye call upon me, and you shall go and pray unto me, and I will hearken unto you." So all it's saying is, all we have to do is read God's word and pray and ask for the help that we need. And yes, you shall seek me and find me when you shall search for me with all your heart, and I will be found of you. And that's true. This is our way of getting our strength because we can't get it from any other person. And as for, let's not forget honesty. Honesty, and as Romans 13 says, it says, "Let us walk honestly as in day, not in rioting and drunkenness." As well as Hebrews 13, that I wanted to share because I thought that was important, because one sentence is all we need, and it says, "Let us go forth." Oh, do I have the right one? Romans 13, 18. 18 says, "Pray for us, for we trust we have a good conscience," something we all need, "and in all things willing to live honestly. And read these verses to yourself. Meditate on them and ask yourself, could you be one to depend on as a witness? And in your thinking, remember these closing words: God's way is the only way. So stop acting like you've got other options. Until next week, I'm Lelia Lewis. Thanks for joining me.